Hey there, welcome. My name is Neil, and right behind me is my dream John Deere garden tractor build. It's a 318 that I've had for a long time, and I've always wanted to do this, but I never seem to find the time. So what I've committed to is working on something on this project every day for as long as it takes until I get it done. Some days I do very little, and some days I get quite a bit done. But over the course of the last 90 days, I have stripped apart 2 different tractors and merged them into one. As with any long-term project, you're gonna have ups and downs, and as you'll see in this video, there's no shortage of struggles that I try to tackle and overcome. But in the end, I'm still getting closer to my goal. So hopefully, you'll like to come along and see what I can get done in this episode.
Dig Drive DIY!
It's day 76, it's a miserable day, and you never really quantify or you don't give enough credit to how much running around is required to do a project like this. And I've been doing lots of running around. Today's one of those days where I'm trying to do a customization on this tractor. This is probably the most heavily customized thing that I've got to do. So this, believe it or not, it's the factory hood decal. And a lot of you picked up on this. These colors aren't gonna work for my custom construction yellow tractor, but I still had to buy the decal because I want an exact replica of this in a different color. And you can't exactly get a hood through a scanning machine, so I've stopped here at a local print shop to see if they can help me out, and we're going to see if we can come up with a nice replica of this in a different color scheme.
Well, it's day 77. I want to continue to reassemble the tractor, but I've been dreading this. I don't know why. I need to get this rear end all cleaned up. I'm gonna have to shoot some paint on it. That's all there is to it. I have a compulsion for saving things like this, little plastic caps and plugs and things of that nature. But every once in a while, they come in handy. Don't want any water getting in this thing. All right, well, this thing wasn't meant to be. I wasn't meant to wash it tonight. Something's wrong with the trigger. It's got pressure in the hose all the way up to here, and I can't relieve the pressure with the valve, so something's not opening in this thing. Another project for another day. It's getting dark, it's time to eat supper. And I'm not in the right frame of mind now. It is day 78, and this might be considered cheating, but technically I am working on the tractor. I'll call it inventory. What I'm really doing is what you don't see. There's a lot of time I spend working on the videos of me doing this tractor. So not only am I working on it every day, we're also shooting and editing every day. I'm gonna make a thumbnail for the video that you've already seen, the last video you saw on this tractor. That's one side of this that really doesn't get to be seen, I guess, but I'm doing all this right now tonight just to try to take a captivating picture for somebody to want to click on this video. No, the previous video. Hopefully you already watched this video a lot. If you didn't, go back and watch it. Boy. All right, well, hopefully one of those is worth a darn. That's gonna have to count for me tonight. Well, it's day 79, kind of a low-key day. Didn't really get much done on the tractor, but since I moved all those parts yesterday to try to take that thumbnail, I thought today would be a good day to start tidying up the shop a little bit. I went and got a pallet and moved a bunch of the parts I'm not gonna be using on the tractor onto the pallet, and I'll get them out of here. So it's one of those regroup type of days where you just gotta kind of change your focus and start over again. That's it. Now the weekend's over, on to the next day. 8-0. I can't believe it's been 80 days. Today I'm actually gonna work on something that I haven't shown you yet. It's one of the reasons this is my dream garden tractor build. For those diehard 300 series John Deere tractor owners that know, you know what this is. Any guesses as to what this is? It's one of the most highly coveted options on the 300 series tractors. This is actually a rear PTO, and these are hard to find. Of all the tractors I've ever owned, I've never bought one that had it on it. All right, so you might be wondering, if I've never had a tractor that had a rear 2000 RPM PTO, then how do I have one now? Well, my good friend Clint bought a 420 that had this PTO on it, and when it came time for him to sell it, I asked him if he'd be willing to keep the PTO back, and he did, so that's how I come up with this. Thank you very much, Clint. I had it mounted up on bill about 5 years ago when we were actually installing the yard at my in-laws' place, and we got a lot of the tilling done around the house, and the bearing started to go out of it. So I took it off of Bill and I haven't replaced it since. It's been sitting in the corner. I knew it was gonna come back for this build here. I wanna get it fixed, and so that's what I'm gonna try to do now. The bearing that's bad is actually right in here, and I can see it's coming apart. Well, we're just gonna have to take it apart and see. Is rough. This is the bearing I got inside of here. This is the winding, so I don't think this comes. Oh, this is the magnet right here. There's the bearing. There's a snap ring there where you're supposed to be able to take that shaft out. So the race here on this shaft is up against there's the outer race. That's what's left of the bearing. All right, I've got an assessment. I know what I need. Yesterday was day 81, like all day long. I didn't do anything really interesting. I researched that bearing that I'm gonna need for the PTO. There's all kinds of helpful people on Facebook in those groups, and there's a nice 318, 420, 430 group, and well, they helped me find the bearing I'm gonna need, so hopefully I can get that on its way. Today is day 82. I think I got the pressure washer squared away. The wand was giving me fits. So I changed out to a different wand that I have. I'm gonna try to get this stuff washed up. This wand works great. I'm gonna put my bibs on. Some degreaser. It's greasy. Well, I call that a productive night. Anytime I can put like an hour in it on an evening between supper and rest time, then I'll call it a win. Another day. Day 83. I'm still trying to get this rear end all prepped, ready for primer and paint. I'm not going as crazy on this as I did the frame and the other stuff, just because all this is always covered. But I just wanted to get some of this rusty scale off of here. Remember, there was a point in time where I wasn't going to do any of this. A little compressed cleaning solvent. A couple little firebugs out there trying to burn those corn stalks. Time for a little primer. Just trying to get a little color on there. This is kind of like combing your hair for picture day at school. It's just going to get messed up again, but it'll look good for mom. Day 84 was yesterday, and I was able to run over to Napa and pick up that bearing that I need for the PTO. So that's a good thing. But it's actually day 85 now, and well, it's nice out. It's a Saturday. I'm going to try to put some paint on this rear end, get one step closer to putting it back in the tractor. So this is going to get the same gray as everything else that's on the frame. You're not going to be able to see a whole lot of it, but I've got some more little parts right here. Somebody asked a really good question the other day. I thought it was worth addressing, but they wanted to know why I was painting the frame and the underbody with rattle cans instead of, you know, heavy paint and a paint gun. And the answer is basically convenience. I knew that I was going to have a lot of little miscellaneous parts, like these little ones that I'd have to go back and spray, and I was going to have, you know, not be able to do it all at once. The rattle cans were just easy enough, and they'll produce a good enough finish. This is too easy. Plus, you can go back and you can grab these cans of paint from the John Deere store and touch it up whenever you want. Now, although I'm tempted to use rattle cans on the fender pans, the body panels, I'm not going to. I'm going to really paint that with a gun. I'll finish up getting primer and paint on all this stuff. I don't expect you guys to hang around to watch it dry, so. Well, today is day 86, and we got to remember the point of this whole project idea is that some days you're just not going to get much done, but you have to stay engaged every day. So I kind of waited knowing that this tape was going to have to come off of here one of these days, and there was going to be a day where I hadn't been able to get anything done, so almost forgot about this back here. Today's the day where I use my mulligan and I do something real light. Well, it's not much, but it's something. Day 87, and really my goal for tonight is to get this kind of off the pallet because, well, can't really use my shop crane with that pallet in the way. So if I can get that on the ground, I can still use my stands. This end is light, so I'm going to pick up the front. Whoa. A little tricky, but we got it. Now I can straddle that frame to get the rear end in there. So it is day 88. We are well into March and spring is fast approaching and I'm ready to get this thing done. So I hope today I hope this step is something that really helps us crest over that hill, and we'll start rolling at a little faster pace towards completion here. So I'm gonna see if I can get this rear end put in, and once the rear end is in, I got a lot of parts I can start bolting back on this. I think I can even start putting the engine back in, so we'll get to it here. That's got to go down just a little bit. Just trying to kind of take it nice and easy. The bolts aren't painted, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. But the bolt heads being not painted doesn't bother me. I knew they'd get marred up when I put a ratchet on them, so I'm gonna go ahead and mount up the 3-point hitch bottom plates and the drawbar hitch, because I want to be able to use the jack to lift up on the tractor and move it around, and that will make it a lot easier. And well, it's all suspended, ready to go right now. So got the rear end in there and part of the hitch. I think I'm gonna go ahead and hook up these oil lines because they tend to be dripping and leaking all over. I'll tell you what, I think that lift paid for itself tonight. That would have been tough to do with the tractor and the forks, or to lift it by myself. So I feel a real sense of momentum coming on now. This is gonna start coming together faster than I'm gonna get parts painted. I could put this together realistically. If I had a good evening, I could get this whole thing put together. It's gonna be getting close now. It's day 89. Got another package in the mail, so maybe this one will do the trick. So what I have here is another attempt at that drain valve situation. So this is just like the Fumoto valve, but it's a different brand. This one was made in China, but I think this might be small enough to work. Okay, so here is the Fumoto valve, and you can see how big that diameter is. And here is this new Easy Drain, and it's quite a bit smaller. So I'm hoping that this will fit in that recess that's on the engine block. Open, closed. So here's the valve, and here is the little extension. All right, let's cross our fingers. It's got a little O-ring on there. It worked! It worked! Now, what I saw online was don't over-tighten these. Okay. Now, the only trick to this is going to be making sure that the valve is pointed up. It's got an O-ring on it as well. That's perfect. By the time that's tight, that's going to perfectly position that valve. God, I got lucky on that. It'll be up, straight up. Wow, that's perfect. Okay, I also got a 90 to put on there. A rubber hose down and out. Easy Drain for the win. Obviously, you guys with regular 318s with the Onan engine, this isn't going to be applicable, but that engine can go back in now. I'm ready to put the engine back in. We're going to have a big day here. Tomorrow, I got a dreaded day. So actually, you're going to see me get into that right now. Day 90. I've been dreading this day. Even though I was able to find a bearing for this rear PTO clutch at my local Napa store, I've been putting off getting it installed because I just know it's going to be painful. But the parts breakdown from John Deere show that there's a bearing, just one bearing in this array. And that bearing is actually right here. That's the bearing that they gave me from John Deere. The actual bearing that failed is in the PTO clutch. And this might be bad too, but I don't know. I tested it and it still works. The magnet still works. It's actually this field coil winding right here. Guess how much they want for this clutch? $588. Instead of spending $588 to get a PTO clutch that I may or may not ever use again, I am going to try the bearing route, even though they're super proud of the bearing at like $40. We're going to try to put, I always say we, like somebody else is here, help me. I'm going to try to put this bearing in, and then we'll see if we can put this back together. Gotta see if I can get that race out of there. There's only a little bit to grab a hold of. That race is inside there, and I got just barely enough lip to hit on it. Got it. Emery cloth, I'm gonna clean out where that race is. It looks bad, but I don't know if it really is bad. My gut tells me it's just gonna work like that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put that new bearing in this. New bearing installed. Now I'm gonna go ahead and replace this bearing while I'm at it, while I'm in here. That bearing is dry, completely dry, so really need to press. Old bearing, new bearing goes there. Clean that up a little. Still gotta get that race off of there. Tight little wedding ring off of there. That feels good. How this works is, this part right here spins all the time. And it spins independently of the part I'm holding with this hand. And then when you energize this magnet, it pulls these little springs together and these two plates come together and connect it as one so that this turns with this, and that's what drives it. Now, if the clutch will work, then I'm gonna give it a shot. Okay, the only thing left to do is adjust the air gap on this clutch. And if you look in here, there's a slot. Take a feeler gauge like this. This one's 18 thousandths. Right there's 18 thousandths. And that is the gap that's supposed to be between those two. So you stick this in there like this, and you tighten this up until it's against that gap. Fits in there nicely in all the slots now. We get a battery. We should be able to energize this coil and see and hear this thing click. Now I just got to bolt this back onto the gear. Okay, almost 1:30 a.m. I think that's enough for tonight. Well, it's day 91, and boy, oh boy, tonight was a bust. Hopefully I'm not the only one that has went through this type of thing, but tonight I had planned to put the rear PTO on, get that installed, and then I could follow up with the 3-point hitch and so I got this rear PTO all ready to go, and I neglected to think about the fasteners that held it on to the rear end. Now, the last time I used this PTO was 5 years ago. That's when the bearing went out, and afterwards I brought it home and I took the PTO off the tractor and I stuck it in the corner. And normally I'm really good about bundling up the fasteners and the things that go together with something, or I label it on a baggie. I've got all my parts and pieces, I've got a note written on them or what it goes to. Well, I tell you what, I spent 2 hours tonight looking for the fasteners that hold the PTO on, and the bolts aren't a big deal. I can replace the bolts, they're just 1/2-inch bolts, but there's a little arm that like an anti-rotation pin that holds the clutch against the frame and keeps it from spinning, and I can't find it. I don't know how I'm gonna come up with it. John Deere probably won't have it, so I'm gonna see if I can find one used, but it totally ruined my night. So I spent a good 2 hours, 2.5 hours tearing the whole building apart. I tried to retrace my steps from 5 years ago, and that's awful hard to do, but I looked everywhere in here. I looked in the old barn, and I'm just out of luck. So that's really gonna impede my progress because I wanted to do that. I think I'm gonna bolt it on there, and then I'll worry about the anti-rotation pin later on. But so I'm disappointed in myself that I apparently lost them, and I got nobody to blame but myself. So Mama always said there'd be days like this, I guess. It's day 92. We've definitely had our ups and downs throughout the last 2 weeks, with some difficulties here and there and some things that took me a lot longer than I thought they were. But tonight I've already been at it a little bit. I put the brakes on here, went through all of that linkage confusion and got the rods figured out and the rubber pads mounted back up on the pedals. That all looks good. I'm excited how that's gonna look against the yellow. I want to do something to end on a positive note. I'm waiting on parts for that PTO, so I gotta hold off on putting that all back together. I don't wanna rush it there, but there's one thing I could do tonight that would make me feel like this thing is really moving along. And I think that's try to get the engine in. We could end on a high note. Let's do that. Now, you've watched me put this engine in and out of this tractor already before, so I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but it is nice knowing that the engine hoist is making its second payment for paying for itself tonight. This is a lot easier than using the 755. I'm going to jack this up and clean the bottom off a little bit. This will be nice, nice. Are you kidding me? It's not gonna work. It's too tight. The engine's gotta come this way. It's hitting against that elbow there, against the frame. That's just not gonna work. I measured and I thought it was close. It's within 1/8 of an inch or less. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try to take that spacer out of there and just modify the valve itself to fit. I'm gonna do a little redneck machining on it. Oh, I thought this was the winner. Whew, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. It just doesn't fit into that recess. It just barely misses it. So if this diameter were smaller, I should keep the shavings out. Now I'm just gonna mill down this edge and make it a little narrower. I'm gonna try a file first up against this part. Well, it's not perfect, but it is smaller. The O-ring's gonna do the work of sealing it up, so I think it's gonna be fine. Well, someone is probably likely to make fun of me for that, but you know what? If it works, I don't care. Oh yeah, that's gonna work. There we go. Now we got plenty of clearance. And I can drop a hose right down out of here. I can reach right in there to open it too. That feels good. That's definitely an up feeling. Engine's back in, rear end's back in. The rest of the parts are kind of superficial at this point. But I'm not trying to drag this out. This is just real life and how long these things take. So I just appreciate you putting up with me, coming every 2 weeks with an update, and hopefully, I'm hoping there's one more final update, and that'll be when it's all done. But life gets in the way, you never know. In the meantime, I'm gonna put a quart of oil in this to see if my new custom machined drain valve works, or leaks rather. And well, you'll have to come back the next time to find out if it does or not. So thank you so much for being here. If I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next one. Now I gotta paint.